Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop. And the Nike KD17 has been leaked, right? So shout out to Shark Kicks. Okay, so first of all, we've had some leaked images of the actual KD17, but it was more of like a render, like a design, like a drawing. But then now we have an actual leak of the shoe, right? And I don't know how this person got it, but here it is, right? And the KDs have been a staple in Nike signature shoes, like basketball shoes. And the KDs have been a very, very good performer. But first of all, before we get into that, we have a dismantling of the Kai1. You guys know the Kai1, Kyrie Irving's brand new signature shoe with Anta. And the Kai1 is supposed to be releasing March 6th. So if you guys do want to get it, make sure you go to anta.com and then sign up for it. It's a pretty limited release, apparently. So I don't think everyone's going to be able to get a pair, but you can sign up just through email on their website, right? But anyways, so the Kai1 looks pretty dang sick. And it is a huge departure from his Nike signature shoe line. It looks very different, and it's probably going to feel pretty dang different because Kyrie's, like his Nike shoe line, it had, of course, the outsole curvature. And then the cushion was more on the responsive side of things. It was more like stiff, right? And also the upper was really, really stiff, of course, for more support, right? Usually they would back it up with a little bit of fuse or glue it down. Of course, not in his later models, but in his earlier models, right? And also they were all mid-tops in his signature shoe line, besides, you know, the Kyrie lows. But I'm talking about his main signature shoe line. But the Kai1, it has a strap, which, you know, the Kyrie 5 had the fly trap strap, the Kyrie 6 has a strap, but the Kai1 looks to have a midfoot strap. And also it is a low top, right? And also it's a pretty good price, 125 bucks for the Kai1 is actually pretty, that surprised me because Anta with their Shockwave 5 Pro, which Kyrie was wearing. When he first signed with Anta, he started wearing the Shockwave 5 Pro, and that shoe was like 210 bucks or something. You know what I mean? So I was like, hopefully Anta doesn't jack up the price for Kyrie's, but that would make sense. You know, as a business, you'd be like, oh, it's Kyrie, he's gonna sell shoes. So I guess that would kind of make sense. But anyways, we have the upper, right? The upper looks actually pretty dang nice. It looks like a textile with some fused overlays. And we also have some embroidery on the toe box, which looks great, right? And I do like embroidered materials because it's it keeps the material soft. Like it's still able to conform to your foot pretty dang well, but it adds a lot of support to it as well. So we can see that from the upper. And also for the cushion, look at that nice N2 foam. It's full length, it looks like, right? But then also in the heel, and I guess like more on the lateral side of the shoe, we have EVA. It says EVA. So honestly, I'm not mad at that. I'm glad that they didn't just cage it. You know, for example, in like the Shockwave 5 and the Shockwave 5 Pro, N2 foam is really soft, right? So they have to cage it, but then they caged it with plastic. It's a pretty hard plastic in the Shockwave 5 and the Pro. But here in the Kai1, they're just using EVA, and that makes sense. They need to make the lateral side of the shoe a little bit more stiff so that it's not too laterally unstable or mushy feeling. So that makes sense as well. We can see the outsole. The outsole, it looks like ramen noodles, right? But it looks very durable, which is of course is a good thing. And we can see the insole, we can see some of the pieces, we can see the strap. So that's pretty dang cool, and I'm very, very excited about that. Hopefully they use, right? Hopefully they use a soft mesh strobel, right? So for example, in the regular Shockwave 5, they didn't use a soft mesh strobe. They used kind of like a softer felt type of material. It was still soft. The step-in comfort was still nice in that shoe, but the Shockwave 5 Pro, it uses like a very, very soft mesh strobe board, and you can literally feel the N2 foam right underneath your foot. So hopefully they do that in the Kai1, because this will be the first shoe that has pretty nice cushion from like a Kyrie shoe. You know what I mean? Like the Zoom Turbo units were nice, but the heel cushion not very nice, you know? And I guess the Zoom Strobel units, but that was a little too much. I'm not a huge fan of Zoom Strobel in the forefoot. But anyways, so there's that. And now moving on to the KD17. So first of all, we have a picture of the outsole, and in this colorway, it's fully translucent. And we have a very chaotic, aggressive, multi-directional pattern, and it looks pretty dang cool, right? Of course, you know, from my experience, the traction pattern, like the outsole pattern, doesn't matter as much. The rubber compound is what's important, and what's gonna kind of bite the actual floor. So we'll have to see if the rubber compound is actually good. But as far as like the grooves go, they do look pretty thick, and hopefully, you know, it is durable, but you know, we'll have to see on how it performs. We can also see if this looks like plastic, maybe probably a plastic mid-foot shank plate. Of course, that's there for torsional support. But yeah, as far as the cushioning setup goes, the cushion looks pretty interesting. So I am zooming in all the way into the actual, like this plastic piece, like this blue plastic piece, but I can't really see what it says. You know, usually it says, you know, if it's Nike Zoom, you know, Air Strobel or whatever, but this picture isn't high quality enough, I guess. So we still don't know what the cushioning setup is going to be. But as far as the cushioning setup goes, right, so from the KD7, right, the KD7, I was not a huge fan of this setup, but here in the heel, this is like an Air Max / Zoom setup. And I believe the KD7 also had a 4-foot Zoom unit, but it was pretty dang unstable for me here in the heel. So I rolled my ankle like 3 times in this shoe, like this exact shoe. So I was pretty dang sad about that. Not a huge fan of the KD7 cushioning setup, but overall this was a pretty nice shoe. I love how the shoe looks, right? But of course, coming here into the KD8, this is when they really started amping up his signature shoe line, and they started adding crazy tech. You guys, I remember they called this like the fly weave or something like that, right? It's kind of like Flyknit, but a little bit different. And of course, we have an articulated Zoom unit, but it's full length, and you can see the articulation right over here, and you can't really compress the Zoom unit as much on the lateral side here, but on the medial side, it's very, very bouncy, right? So the KD8, I believe, is when they jacked up the price. It was like 180 bucks, pretty dang expensive if I remember correctly. But this is when they started, you know, to put crazy tech in KD's shoe line. And then of course we got the KD9, which was, again, crazy Zoom unit. This was a really nice shoe, super duper bouncy. And then, of course, the KD10 was pretty much the same exact shoe. The traction pattern is different, but the cushioning setup is exactly the same. And they're both using Flyknit, right? But, you know, crazy full-length Zoom setups, right? And then, of course, we got the KD11, which also had a full-length Zoom setup. Not a huge fan of this cushioning setup either because of all this caging. First of all, it was using React, but because of all this caging, you know, it wasn't really nice. But it was pretty dang bouncy right underneath the foot. They're using like full-on Flyknit, which was pretty dang nice, but it did lack lateral counter, so the lateral containment wasn't very good in the KD11. And then, of course, directly after that, they added a lateral counter, which of course is a good thing. And this is when they first introduced full-length Zoom Strobel, and the traction was really not good on dust with this translucent colorway, but with the solid rubber outsoles, it was really nice, right? The material, of course, does suffer. I definitely do miss the very nice knits that they were giving us for a couple years from like the KD8, 9, 10, 11. With the KD7 and before that, they were giving us mesh. You know, the KD7s were kind of more on the budget side of things, not super expensive yet. But yeah, the KD12, it wasn't the best for the materials, but the cushion was very nice, of course, right? And of course, next we got the KD13, which is like my favorite shoe, one of my favorite shoes in this entire shoe line. But of course, the KD14 is definitely my favorite. The KD14 is my favorite, and then the 13 is like my second favorite, right? But yeah, both of these shoes have full-length Zoom Strobel units, but the KD13 had this crazy cage, right? And especially with this is foam, but it's still super clunky, not a lot of compression from the actual midsole. But the 14, we had an actual like exposed cushion, which had a lot of compression with the full-length Zoom Strobel unit, and the traction was god tier, goat traction. The upper, of course, I wish they would go back to the old school materials like the Flyknit, you know, especially in like the 11 was pretty nice, although it was glued down, but the 10 was, I feel like, the best. You know, the 10 was really nice. Honestly, also the KD8, you know, this is a really thin material, you know. But yeah, the 14 is definitely one of my favorites. 13 also really nice traction. And then of course we got the KD15, which was super similar to the KD14, but it did have heel slippage, so I didn't like it as much, but it's still very nice. And then we have the most recent, which is the KD16 with, you know, a fully translucent outsole. Not the best for traction, especially on dust. I heard the solid rubber outsole was better, but in my personal experience, I mean, it's a really good bite on the clean court, but not the best on dust. But yeah, they did change up the cushioning setup here, right? So the foam actually still has a good amount of compression, but we have a very large volume zoom unit here in the forefoot, and then an air strobo unit in the heel, which is a huge change up from literally his last, what, 12, 13, 14, 15, right? His last 4 shoes from the past 4 years, right? So as far as the KD17 goes, we're not 100% sure what the cushioning setup is going to be, but hopefully, you know, the foam is like a Cushlon or something like that. Hopefully it's soft. There's probably going to be a lot of compression in the heel, right? But it does look like the rubber does come up the cage, the back of the heel a good amount, which kind of makes me sad. You know, I like to have a little bit more compression on the lateral side, and then in the heel, like I still want it soft here, you know what I mean? But anyways, as far as like zoom unit or air strobo unit, we don't know what they're going to be using. I wonder what KD likes, you know what I mean? Because he's had full-length zoom for such a long time. I mean, since like the KD8, you know what I mean? And of course, the full-length zoom setup has, you know, differed. It's been different every single shoe, but like going from like the full-length zoom unit here in the KD11 to like, you know, this setup, and then you know, full-length zoom strobo. He's loved full-length zoom, so I wonder if he's gonna go back to the full-length zoom setup in the KD17, or is he gonna keep it the same as the KD16? We're not 100% sure. And also, as far as the upper goes, the upper, not a huge fan of how it looks, you know what I mean? It is heavily inspired by the Air Max Plus, especially of course with that cage design. It looks pretty much identical, right? The upper looks to be like a mesh material, like a textile mesh. Hopefully it is better than the KD16 and also like the 14. Like his past like 4 models, as far as the upper goes, has been pretty not so nice, you know, especially with the meshes. For quality, you know, it feels pretty nice on foot. It's thin, but hopefully with this, the quality is a little bit better. But just like from looking at it, it doesn't look like the best, you know. But as far as the overall silhouette goes, I definitely feel like it looks better than the 16 though. The 16 definitely was not my favorite. The 15 was pretty good. The 14 was absolutely, like, I don't like how this shoe looks, you know. Performance wise, it's the best, I love it, but looks wise, not my favorite. But as far as like looks goes, I would have to say the 13 is probably one of my favorites, right? 13, and also I really like how the 7 looks too. But yeah, I am pretty dang excited about the KD17. KD is supposedly going to debut these during the playoffs, right? Supposedly, so we'll have to see. But also, I've heard rumors that it'll probably release during the summer as well. But yeah, tell us what you guys think of the KD17 aesthetically down in the comment section below. And also, what do you guys think the cushioning setup is going to be? And also, what is your favorite KD shoe? Like performance-wise, what's your favorite? And also, what is your favorite aesthetically? Tell us down in the comment section below. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.